Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Norvell, Florida State, a massive opportunity on the recruiting trail the next couple of days as they are playing host to a ton of top targets from across the country. And this has been, at least to me, one of the biggest changes you have seen within this Florida State program. Look, we've seen a lot of change over the last couple of weeks and months, right? New players, new coaching staff. One of the things that jumps out to me the most is Florida State wants to get back to recruiting the high school ranks at an extremely high level. And this was kind of an underlying problem even when Florida State was winning a lot of football games. It felt like what they were doing on the high school recruiting trail just was not good enough. And it caught up to this program in 2024. We've seen a lot of changes, but how Florida State is addressing and operating on the recruiting trail is one of the biggest changes that we are seeing be made within this program. Want to talk about a couple of names that really excite me that will be on campus for Florida State. Before we get into it, as always, the Florida State fans, appreciate you guys. We got spring practice kicking off. We got a Florida State team that's operating a little bit differently on the recruiting trail. Going to be a busy next couple of weeks. It has been a busy last couple of weeks. The amount of support that y'all have shown the fellas has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it now. One of the things that you are going to note as we talk about some of these players now, we're not going to get into every single player that's on campus because that would take us probably 90 minutes to work through. But one of the things that you are going to notice as we talk these players, there's a little bit less projection, very similar to the conversation that we had in the transfer portal, where Florida State seemed to be much more focused on, hey, we don't care what program that you're coming from. We don't care about the name that you have. We want to get guys that are kind of proven producers at the collegiate level. On the high school trail, you're seeing Florida State lean into guys that, yeah, we're still going to bet on traits. That's what high school recruiting is all about. But we also want to get guys that have played a lot of football, have played really good football. And I think Bo Bentley is the perfect example of this. I mean, you start talking about Bo Bentley, yeah, he's a really good athlete with a really good arm. We'll talk about that. But what it starts with Bo Bentley is arguably two of the most important things you want to see out of a quarterback coming out of high school. One, he's a winner. Junior year, first year starting at the quarterback position, undefeated state championship in the state of Texas. This kid's a gamer. You talk about that's often a hard thing to quantify, but you know it when you see it. You turn on the film with Bo Bentley, gets himself out of trouble, can get it done both as an athlete and as a thrower of the football. Three-sport athlete, plays lacrosse, runs track and field, really good athlete at the quarterback position that also is a very, very talented thrower of the football, and he's a competitor. And that's something that's really important to me. He's emerged as one of my favorite quarterbacks in all of the 2026 class. And it seems like Florida State really does like this kid. And I think you're going to see Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn really turn it up for Bo Bentley. And credit Florida State. They were one of the programs that were in on Bo Bentley early. This was a guy that was not a massive name when he was a sophomore, was certainly not a massive name as a freshman. Florida State, very similar to how they won the battle with Luke Kromenhoek. They identified him early, got in on him early. Now, all the other Power 4 programs are coming after Bo Bentley too, but because Florida State was early on this kid, I think that certainly gives them a leg up in the recruitment. Another name to monitor, and we're just going to talk about him a little, Xavier Griffin, right? Committed to USC, 5-star linebacker. Everybody wants him. He's going to be hard to flip from USC, but it's probably worth noting. Xavier Griffin is the ideal. If you were to build that jack linebacker position in the Tony White defense in a laboratory, it would look like a guy like Xavier Griffin, very similar to how we talk about with Amari Williams. Xavier Griffin, yeah, he might start his career as an off-ball linebacker as he continues to fill out the frame. This kid is special coming off the edge. It's exactly what you're looking for a jack linebacker. Hey, you got to be physical enough to stop the run along the line of scrimmage. You have to be good enough rushing the passer off the edge, but you also have to drop back in space and be able to operate in coverage. It's a very hard position to find players who are gifted enough to do that. Xavier Griffin is that guy. And if you are Tony White, you are selling Xavier Griffin on the opportunity to come in and come off the edge and be that almost, Abdul Carter vibes to him, right? There's a lot of programs that are just going to recruit Xavier Griffin as an off-ball linebacker. If you're Florida State, you're selling him on the opportunity to get more involved in the defense and have an opportunity to really have a bigger imprint on the football game. This one is certainly worth monitoring if you're a Florida State fan. Another name that I really like, Jaylan Lamar. Hey, there's probably a lot of people who are just, he's going to Georgia. One of the best players in the state of Georgia, top running back in the state. He's going to Georgia. Well, what happened last year? Florida State goes up into the state of Georgia, lands one of the best running backs in the country. Jaylan Lamar is a box checker. Why I think that's so important, when I use the term box checker specifically at the running back position, I mean it in the biggest form of a compliment. You see a lot of running backs come out of high school and they're one-trick ponies. They're either these big bruising running backs or these track and field running backs, right? Jaylan Lamar checks all the boxes. He can do anything you want. He can run between the tackles physically, work off contact, but he's also a guy that when you get him out in space, he's going to make you miss, and he has the ability to hit the home run ball. And that it's hard to find those kind of running backs that can give you between the tackle physicality, but also when they get into space, when they get to the second level, they can operate at a really high level. Jaylan Lamar is one of those guys. You look at him, really good long speed, really good short area quickness, really good contact balance, 6', 205. There's no verified track times for Jaylan Lamar, at least the ones that I found. I ain't got no question mark about the speed, because when you turn on the film, nobody catches this kid from behind, and he's running away from defensive backs. Another name that I love for Florida State fans, and this one is, to me, should be a top priority, Deuce Geralds. This kid's fat. I mean, the first couple of plays you turn on with the film, he's playing running back, and he's elite at it. Now, he's obviously at 6'2.5", 265 pounds, not going to play running back at the collegiate ranks, but the athleticism that this kid puts on display is special. And from a size speed combination, there might not be a single defensive lineman that brings what Deuce Gerald brings to the table. Now, a little bit of a tweener, which is okay if you're Florida State. Tony White gets creative with his defensive fronts. Deuce Gerald's, I think, would benefit from the Tony White defense, where, hey, he can be that heavy-handed edge, kind of like Ruben Bain, quite frankly. But he's also a guy that could put on enough weight and play the 3-tech too and be a problem at the 3-tech. He's a guy that, I think fits what Tony White wants to do on the defensive line with the versatility that he brings to the table. He's a premier athlete that blends size, speed, athleticism at an extraordinarily high level. You look at it, he's athletic enough to play the edge. He's strong enough to play on the inside. It's hard to find defensive linemen that bring that to the table. Deuce Geralds does that at a high level. Two defensive backs that you're looking at, one, La'Zai Jackson. What I love about him is he could play probably just about any position in the back end. 6'3", buck 80. He plays boundary cornerback for the most part in the state of Georgia. I think he might be best as a safety. Loves coming downhill and laying the wood and being physical at the point of attack, getting involved in the run game. What stands out to me the most about him is if you do play him at safety, he's got elite man coverage ability. It's hard to find. There's a lot of safeties who are liabilities when they're asked to play man coverage. La'Zai Jackson is the stark opposite. He's an asset when you want to play him in man coverage because he has so much cornerback background, and he very well could just be a really good boundary cornerback too. Having that versatility, getting your best five on the football field helps in a big way. Last one, Samari Matthews, just a smooth, polished cornerback, long, really smooth mover, knows how to find the football. Technician at the position is probably the word I would use to describe a guy like Samari Matthews. There's a lot of cornerbacks who are just freak athletes and maybe not all that good at the position yet. Samari Matthews is a good athlete. It's very clear on the film, but he's also a technician at the sport. And that's something that you look at cornerbacks who struggle to adapt to the collegiate ranks. I'll show you a cornerback that's a really good athlete that can, operate at the high school level because he's such a good athlete, but then struggles at the college football level because they ain't that good at the position. Samari Matthews, very good athlete that checks off all the athletic profile boxes you want, but also is a strong understanding of what it means to be a boundary cornerback. Every name that we just went through are guys that, to me, there's not a ton of projection. There's a guy, they're going to be good football players at the collegiate ranks. And that's the biggest thing you've seen. I mean, I think Florida State's going away from, and this is not me getting up here and saying don't take a guy like Akeem Williams. You want to bet on those guys more times than not, because more times than not, they're going to turn into good football players. But you can't only recruit those kind of guys, because if they all kind of miss and all take a little bit longer to develop, that's how you end up going 2-10. There's a lot of guys that Florida State seems to be going after that are just guys that you look at and say, going to be really good football players for the next 3 to 4 years. And that's, I think, the fundamental change that we've seen Florida State go through in terms of how they want to go about their business on the high school recruiting trail. There's a difference in the kind of players they want to add. There's a difference in the evaluation, it seems like Florida State's going through, and I'm a fan of it. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.